Welcome everyone to this EGI 101 introduction session. I'm Gergely Sipos, I'm Head of Services Solutions and Support at the EGI Foundation, and I'm very happy to present you an overview of the EGI Federation today. We decided to start with such a session this time. Normally we don't have such a session at the EGI conferences, but we thought it would be good to present a generic basic overview of EGI because of the online format of the conference. We expect to have several new people in the community who will hear about EGI for the first time, and that's why in this session I try to give you the basic information that you need to know to more successfully attend the rest of the conference. The slides are already available online in the conference website, so if you wish to browse them while I'm speaking, please feel to do so. In the next 30 minutes, I would like to give you a really basic introduction to EGI, covering who we are, why we come together as a federation, what are the services and technologies that we deliver, for whom, for different target audiences. I try to use examples as much as possible to illustrate what I'm talking about. And I will have yellow boxes on many of my slides. These boxes help you navigate through the conference and will point you to specific sessions where you can learn more about the topic which I briefly cover on my slides. So let's get started. EGI started back around the mid-90s, with the precursor of EGI being the Large Hadron Collider computing grid, which is the IT infrastructure that was set up by CERN and its collaborators to help the high energy physics community deal with the massive amount of data that is generated by the detectors of the Large Hadron Collider. Over the years, other disciplinary areas also recognize the need for a distributed international or global computing infrastructure. So around 2010, the concept that was developed by CERN for the Large Hadron Collider IT infrastructure made more general and were opened up for other disciplines. And this is what became EGI, basically a pan-European infrastructure that supports diverse set of disciplinary areas with the computing infrastructure that they need to deal with the massive amount of digital data that they produce through different types of experiments. The infrastructure is multidisciplinary, it's multi-technology, it caters for really diverse needs, as you will hear later in my presentation. EGI today supports more than 250 different experiments or scientific projects or collaborations of different types and size. What happened in 2010, this transition, is when the EGI Foundation was established. That's a legal entity based in Amsterdam, which coordinates the whole compute infrastructure as the federation. Today, the federation consists of 22, or the EGI Foundation, this coordinating institute, has 22 countries as participants and 2 scientific communities represented, the high energy physics by CERN and the climate research community by IS-INES. You can see on this page the members, logos, and on the website there are links also to the national website. You can see that we have quite a big coverage of all the European countries, with Germany and Ukraine currently in associated status, but the blue countries are full participants. Full participation means that these countries have a seat in the so-called EGI Council, which is the highest board that decides about the future of the infrastructure, the direction we take, and the relationships that we build with other initiatives in Europe and worldwide. The mission why these countries and these national infrastructures came together is shown on the next slide. Basically, we recognize the need for collaboration and harmonized delivery of compute infrastructures in order to facilitate international research at different scales. And for this, we deliver open solutions that provide computing and data analytics services for research communities. The EGI community, with the participants, and as you will see later with collaborators around the globe, supports academic research at universities, at research centers, but also has collaboration with the private sector. So our user base is very diverse and is global. What we as a community deliver is shown on this slide. That's the so-called EGI Service Catalogue. That's the value proposition that we position towards scientific users, both from academia and industry. And in this service catalog that's accessible through our website, you can see that we have various technical areas covered. The most important and the most popular, most heavily used part of our catalog is the compute infrastructure bit. In the compute infrastructure, we have different flavors of compute resources and services: cloud computing, which is infrastructure as a service cloud, container computing, an even more lightweight version of shipping workloads, the high throughput computing, which used to be called grid computing, and that's where the Large Hadron Collider experiment and setup started. Workload manager that helps the user distribute a massive number of jobs onto international infrastructures across data centers. We have a storage and data area with online storage, archive storage, and data transfer service. We have an application area where we have different applications on demand, kind of hosted applications in the cloud. We have applications for next generation sequencing, molecular dynamics, and climate research, as well as different tools that users can apply to integrate their own application with the cloud and to turn those applications into online services. And we have Jupyter Notebooks service as well in this area. We have services for security, which facilitates access, username, and login-based access to the rest of the infrastructure and enables federated login for the users. And we have a training area where, besides training about the technical tools, we also have training about IT service management, about security, and we offer an infrastructure for trainers who want to run courses at universities or in different other settings using cloud infrastructures. Maybe a new thing that I highlight is that we recently opened a dedicated documentation page where you can find the technical documentation of all the technical services that you can see on this page. And later during the conference, we have many sessions, actually 2 times 4 sessions, that will on one hand introduce and provide use cases about the 4 technical areas that we have covered. And we'll have 4 so-called clinic sessions where you can go and ask very specific questions or bring very specific problems that these different services can solve. So I encourage you to attend the respective overview use cases and clinic sessions of those areas that you are most interested in. Let me show a bit about the infrastructure itself. So who are the centers that deliver these services? You can see 2 maps here. The first map, the one with the higher number of dots, shows the so-called high throughput compute providers. This is the infrastructure that's also used by the high energy physics experiments and many other particle or astroparticle experiments or gravitational wave experiments. This high throughput compute infrastructure enables the distribution of massive number of computational tasks to perform data analytics and then to integrate the results into graphical findings or any other outcomes. There is a smaller but more rapidly emerging infrastructure in EGI, so-called the federated cloud or cloud infrastructure. You can see the endpoints here that we have at the moment. This cloud infrastructure provides infrastructure as a cloud services for users. This infrastructure as a cloud service enables interactive computing besides other forms of computing, also container computing, for example, for the users. So it's a new technology, or a newer technology than the high throughput compute technology. It's more emerging in many other disciplines. On the previous slide, you may have noticed that we have dots also outside of Europe. That's because, meanwhile, the EGI Federation, the EGI Foundation has participants from European countries. We have partnerships from around the globe. We formulate these partnerships with e-infrastructure providers outside of Europe. We formulate that in the form of memorandum of understandings. On this slide, you can see the portfolio of those memorandum of understandings we have around the globe. The different colors mean different continents. So this shows the Americas. The green shows the Asian continent. This lightish blue shows the so-called Eastern Partnership. So that's the West Asia, East Europe region. With these infrastructures, we built relationships to align service delivery, to align capacity provisioning and capacity allocation for communities with international footprint. Later today, there will be a session dedicated to the different partnership and membership models that EGI offers. So if you are interested in joining the EGI Foundation as a member, or you are interested in building such a partnership collaboration with EGI, then this is the session for you to attend. Let me talk a bit about the conditions under which users can access the different services that I briefly explained 2 or 3 slides ago. There are basically 3 types of access modes that we offer. One, the simplest one and the most attractive one actually, is the so-called wide access. The wide access basically provides capacity and provides services that can be freely accessed by anyone from anywhere around the globe. These capacities are donated by the EGI members to facilitate the uptake of the EGI service portfolio. Very often these services are limited in capacity, but give you the full flavor of the functionality that the EGI portfolio offers. So some examples of these services, we have cloud capacity that can be accessed by anyone for application piloting. We have a Jupyter Notebook Hub where anyone can have an account and play around and write code and run code on the backend resources. We have discipline-specific capacities that can be used for high-throughput computing. The second way of access, and this is where most of the capacity is allocated, is the so-called policy-based access. And these policies basically define who are eligible for access a given set of services. We create these capacity pools typically for disciplinary areas or for a specific scientific experiment. For example, we have a pool of high throughput compute resources that are allocated for biomedical research. And therefore, this pool is open for biomedical researchers based on the access conditions that are defined in the access policy document of that particular capacity. The providers who donate the resources for those policy-based access have the right to define the policies as well. So sometimes it's very open. For example, any researcher for a given disciplinary area can use a given set of services. Sometimes it's specific and restricted to members of a specific project or members of a specific scientific experiment. In any case, the policy of that service pool defines the access conditions. And the third option under which we offer access to services is the so-called market-driven, or sometimes other called pay-for-use access. In this case, the user community comes with a budget, which is used then to allocate capacity and to pay the providers in EGI to deliver the services. We have such a pay-for-use model for specific services. For example, some of the FITSM training service that we deliver are pay-for-use, unless it's co-funded by a certain project, or we have pay-for-use cloud providers that dedicate capacity for customers or projects who have a budget to pay for those. So these are the three different types of access modes, and I will illustrate this with examples later on. So who do we serve? Who are the customers of those services that I described earlier? The prime focus of EGI is the international science, or multi-country or even multi-continental science. So the prime target groups or customer group for us are the large research infrastructure collaborations that require compute, storage, and data transfer and other capacities in multiple countries. The second group of customers for us are the international projects, which have a shorter lifetime than research infrastructures, but still have footprint in more than one country, typically up to 10 countries. The other groups include industry and SMEs. So in this aspect, we collaborate with various companies who use EGI services to develop new products, for example, to pilot new approaches, or the so-called long tail of science, which are individual researchers or research groups that don't have dedicated capacity and want to chip into EGI services in order to conduct a specific experiment or to run a specific simulation areas. The main way how we serve these communities, I'm talking primarily about the research infrastructures and the multinational project, is that we negotiate capacity for them with the providers we have in the EGI Federation. So here on the right side of the slide, you can see examples of services that we provide. We provide storage, we provide high throughput computing, we provide cloud, we provide specific expertise around these areas and user support. And the scientific experiment comes to us with a set of requirements concerning the IT infrastructure that they need. We matchmake these requirements with the partners in the EGI Federation. We perform a negotiation for them, and at the end we sign a so-called service level agreement that defines the services that we deliver for a specific customer community and the conditions under which these services can be accessed. With the providers, we have a so-called operation level agreements, one agreement with each of the providers that participate in a given service level agreement. So we have two sides of this equation. And once this agreement or these agreements are made, these can be one or multi-year agreements, depending on the type of partnership we have. Then the user project or user community can start consuming these resources based on the access methods or interfaces that we offer or that are available by the different providers. During this use, we have a continuous relationship management with the customers. We have regular satisfaction interviews to understand the actual use of the resources, any difficulties that the customer or user community faced with the use. And we have a continuous monitoring of the performance and availability and reliability of the resources that are delivered in order to ensure that the promises we made in the service level agreement are eventually met during the execution. So we have such service level agreements with different communities. One community, for example, is the Photon and Neutron Research Infrastructures group, which came together in a Horizon 2020 project called PaNOSC. There are 6 photon and neutron source research infrastructures in that project, covering different countries, and EGI helps these infrastructures to facilitate the exploitation of their data, and we basically built up an infrastructure for them in the EGI Cloud with the hosting of a Jupyter Hub notebook interface connecting to the community's own identity federation that enables researchers from this discipline to interact with the scientific data that are produced by these experiments, to interact with the data, to perform analysis and visualization, and then to write the final science-ready data or the final results of the calculations back into the long-term archives operated by these experiments. Later today, there is a specific session where such a setup will be further discussed and planned for continuation under the European Open Science Cloud. Here it's just a snapshot of a very specific service level agreement. There's a document that describes basically the capacities that we deliver for a given community. In this example, it's for a project called NextGeos working in earth sciences. And here you can see that we deliver cloud services from multiple providers for the hosting of their different types of domain-specific services. And in the SLA, there are clear description of the number of CPUs we deliver, the memory for those CPUs, the disk, the number of public IP addresses, the type of access, and the mode of payment. Additionally, the SLA also defines the kind of human support element. So for example, how was the timeline for responding to help desk requests or user support requests, depending on the priority of the ticket. I mentioned earlier the Jupyter Notebook as an example of a service that's open for anyone. So if you are interested to try out an EGI service, then I would recommend you to use this one. If you go to the notebooks.egi.eu, then you can log in with either a social login or a federated login from the EGI Federation of Federations. And there you can get 1 CPU, 1 GB RAM and 10 GB storage notebook instance with a permanent storage in the back. So even after logout, you don't lose your work. It's already usable for certain kind of data analytics. Later during the week, there will be a specific demo on this setup and with some new features that are available in that through the binder and the Data Hub add-ons. So let me show just a snapshot of the spread of the use of EGI across disciplines. We typically measure the usage with different metrics, not just one metric. Here I'm showing you 2 metrics. One is the number of users. So how many users are actually using the EGI infrastructure? Roughly 27,000 as of today. You can see the spread of those 71,000 users across disciplines. You can see that the medical discipline brings the highest number of users, followed by the high energy physics and earth sciences. But if we look at the right side, there's the CPU consumption. Here in the CPU consumption, if we look at the high throughput compute infrastructure part, then here the physics disciplines dominate. So high energy physics and astronomy and astrophysics take almost the entire capacity here. But in the cloud infrastructure, which I said it's a more diverse in terms of the usability, we see a different layout. Natural sciences still dominate. That includes a wide range of natural science disciplines, but with slightly lower numbers, followed by engineering, technology, medical and health sciences, and other disciplines too. So in this cloud infrastructure, you can see that the diversity is much, much bigger. And let me move on to the other part of EGI, the so-called internal service catalog. Those services that keeps the federation together, that helps us to deliver this capacity as an integrated entity. This is made possible by the so-called internal services, those services that we offer for members of the federation, members of the EGI Foundation. And these members can use these capacities to integrate their compute infrastructure together and to deliver a harmonized, ready-to-use infrastructure for a scientific experiment or scientific project. I'm not going through this list, but I want to point out that this internal service catalog includes technical elements such as operational tools, including a monitoring system, a usage accounting system, help desk, those IT tools that are operated centrally by EGI and can make a data center and compute center interact with its users. And we have a human element, a coordination element, such as with security oversight or security coordination, strategy policy development, community coordination and outreach, and so on. These internal services will have 2 sessions later during this week where the current status and the future plans and roadmaps will be presented. So if you are interested in bringing your input into the table, then please attend those 2 sessions. And these internal services are the ones that made available really large-scale experiments, such as the LHC collaboration and the LIGO-Virgo gravitational wave collaborations. The important aspect of these collaborations is that they have their partners who are the compute centers, and they needed the internal service portfolio to glue those partners together in order to deliver an integrated capacity. So how does that work? A very specific example with the Large Hadron Collider. The collider is under the Swiss-Franco border with 4 detectors across this large ring. And these 4 detectors basically pump out the data with an unprecedented speed. There are different filtering steps which require massive computing systems. And then the production of science-ready data and distribution of science-ready data happens to different 11 data centers across the globe, which are then made available for scientists to perform their custom experiments. So in every stage of this pipeline, there is a massive number of computers and storage involved, and these computers are glued together with the EGI internal services and made accessible and available for the scientists worldwide. Let me finish this presentation with a slide about the IT service management, which is called the FITSM training on the EGI service portfolio. This IT service management is a way how we make sure that our members deliver professional and customer-driven services. IT service management is a practice which helps data centers or compute centers or service centers basically organize their processes and their stuff behind a customer-focused service delivery. We use the FITSM, which is an open approach to IT service management, and we use the FITSM process-based approach to define the delivery method of the EGI external and internal service portfolios. I'm not going into the details here, but want to point out that later this week there will be a free FITSM course, and I encourage you to attend that. Yesterday at least there were still places available. This time the course is co-funded by the EOSC Hub project, so you still have attended, you still can attend it for free. And let me close the presentation with this last slide, which puts EGI into the bigger picture of the European Open Science Cloud and other initiatives. I would like to point out 2 aspects here. Until the end of this year, EOSC had a first phase driven by various European co-funded projects, out of which the EOSC Hub project was the biggest one. Is still running until March next year. EOSC Hub is coordinated by the EGI Foundation, and it delivers the main or core elements of the European Open Science Cloud, including the portal, the EOSC portal, the help desk, a marketplace, all those tools that facilitate access to services in the EOSC landscape. EGI participated in the design and operation of the different protocols and processes that are needed to deal with the customers, their orders, their access management, to onboard new service providers. And EGI contributes largely to the service portfolio of EOSC. For example, let me point out that the most popular service at the moment in EOSC is the EGI Cloud service that the EGI Federation brings in as a single entity. And from next year, there will be the second phase of EOSC, where the EOSC Association, a recently established legal entity, will take the ownership of the further development. There will be still H2020 projects running. For example, the EGI ACE project, which will deliver a compute infrastructure. That EGI ACE project is coordinated by the EGI Foundation. And later this week in the closing plenary on Wednesday, I will talk about the EGI ACE project, and my colleague will talk about other new projects that will start in January. And we will show you in more details how EGI contributes to those projects and through those projects to the future of the European Open Science Cloud. So with this last slide, let me close the presentation, pointing you to different publications where you can learn more and pointing you to the service portfolio that are open for researchers and research communities. And if you have further questions, please write to the support@egi.eu email address. Thank you.